I want to start with a question. When was the last time something you owned broke? And when you thought about it, it broke at a suspiciously convenient time. Just outside the warranty, just after a new model came out. Just soon enough that replacing it felt easier than fixing it. That feeling you had, that's not paranoia. That's pattern recognition. And the pattern has a name. It's called planned obsolescence. And it didn't just happen to one product. It became the organizing philosophy of modern manufacturing. Built into the light bulbs in your ceiling, the clothes on your back, the shoes on your feet, and the furniture in your home. Today, I want to take you through all four of those. Not as a rant, as a documented, sourced, historical walkthrough of how this happened, who decided it, and what it's been costing you ever since. Because the most important part of this story isn't the products, it's that someone made a conscious decision to build things this way. And we've been paying for that decision ever since, without most of us ever knowing it was made. Let's start at the beginning with a light bulb and a meeting that changed everything. In 1924, the major light bulb manufacturers of the world, including General Electric, Philips, and Osram, formed a secret cartel. They called it the Phoebus Cartel. And they made a decision that would shape how almost every product you own is designed, manufactured, and sold. They agreed, in writing, with fines for violations, to officially limit the lifespan of their light bulbs to 1,000 hours. At the time, bulbs were already lasting 2,500 hours. They had the engineering, they had the capability. They chose to cut the lifespan by more than half. On purpose, in writing, with meeting minutes that historians have since studied and documented. This is not a theory. This is not speculation. The Phoebus Cartel is documented history. The records exist. Before 1924, a longer-lasting bulb was a selling point. Better engineering meant a better product and more loyal customers. That was the logic of manufacturing. After 1924, longer lasting became a threat to revenue. So they engineered products to fail at a predictable rate. And then they built a fine system to make sure every member of the cartel was failing their products at exactly the same rate, because a bulb that lasted too long was a competitive disadvantage. Let that sit for a moment. They fined each other for making bulbs that worked too well. The Phoebus Cartel is the moment planned obsolescence became a deliberate, documented, coordinated business model. And that thinking spread not just to other electrical products, but to every industry that watched and learned from what those light bulb manufacturers proved. A product that never breaks is a product you only sell once. And once wasn't enough. This is the foundation everything else in this video is built on. The light bulb didn't just change how we lit our homes. It changed how corporations thought about the relationship between product quality and profit. And once that shift happened, it was very hard to put back. Now let's look at what the philosophy looks like 100 years later, in the clothes you're wearing right now. Now, most people think of plastic as bottles and bags, but approximately 70% of your clothing is also plastic. Just plastic that's been spun into fiber and woven into fabric. When we say synthetic fabric, polyester, acrylic, nylon, spandex, we are talking about fabric made from petrochemicals, from oil. The same raw material used to make plastic bottles and plastic packaging is also used to make the majority of clothing sold today. The difference is that instead of being molded into a rigid shape, it gets melted down and spun into extremely fine threads, thinner than a human hair, that get woven into fabric. It looks like clothing and it feels like clothing, but at a molecular level, it is plastic. And here's where it becomes a problem that extends well beyond your closet. Every time you wash a synthetic garment, those fine plastic threads shed tiny fragments called microplastics or microfibers that are invisible to the naked eye. A single load of polyester laundry can shed over 700,000 of these fibers. They are too small to be caught by your washing machine filter. They flow out with the wastewater. Most water treatment plants are not equipped to filter particles this small, so the majority pass straight through into rivers, lakes, and eventually the ocean. They have been found in tap water, in bottled water, in fish, in shellfish, in sea salt, in human blood, in human lung tissue, and in human placentas. This is not a future risk. This is current, documented, ongoing contamination. According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, synthetic textiles are responsible for 35% of all microplastics in the ocean. The primary delivery mechanism is your washing machine, your laundry. And a typical polyester garment can keep shedding microplastics for over 100 years before it fully degrades. So that $12 shirt you wore 3 times before the seams gave out will be releasing plastic into the water supply long after you and I are both gone. Now let's talk about what that same fabric is doing to your skin. Synthetic fibers don't breathe the way natural fibers do. They trap heat and moisture against the skin, which disrupts your skin's natural microbiome, the beneficial bacteria that protect and hydrate your skin. Studies have linked prolonged contact with synthetic fabrics to contact dermatitis, skin irritation, and rising rates of eczema and acne, particularly in people who wear synthetic activewear or sleep in synthetic bedding. The dyes and chemical treatments used to color and finish synthetic garments are also a concern. Some of these chemicals have been linked to hormonal disruption. Some studies suggest certain compounds can enter the bloodstream through prolonged skin contact. You are wearing this against your body every single day. So how do you know what you're wearing? Check the label. Every garment sold in the United States is required by law to list its fiber content, usually at the back of the neck or on a side seam. Plastic-based fabrics to watch for: polyester, nylon, acrylic, spandex, lycra, elastane. Viscose and rayon sit in a middle ground. Plant-based material, but heavily chemically processed. Natural fibers to look for instead: 100% cotton, ideally organic, 100% wool, linen, hemp, silk, bamboo lyocell, which is a plant-based fiber processed with non-toxic methods and is one of the better alternatives available. The closer to 100% natural fiber, the better. A blend that is 95% polyester and 5% cotton is still essentially plastic. Fast fashion is a manufacturing model built on one premise: make it cheap enough that throwing it away feels easier than keeping it. Weak seams, dyes that fade, fabric that pills and unravels, designed to last one season and be replaced. The average American now generates 82 pounds of textile waste every year. We consume around 80 billion new pieces of clothing annually, 400% more than 20 years ago. Fast fashion is now a $150 billion industry. They sold us the idea that affordable fashion was democratizing style. What they actually built was a system that extracts cheap labor from people in other countries, extracts cheap synthetic materials from fossil fuels, sells you something designed to fall apart, and leaves the environmental cost in the water supply for everyone to share. That is not democratizing anything. That is externalizing the cost onto people who had no say in it and calling it a good deal. There was a time when your shoes wore out and you took them to a cobbler who put new soles on them and you kept wearing them for another decade. Now that service still exists, but the shoes being sold today are specifically built so you can't use it. A well-made shoe has always been built around one principle: repairability. The upper, the part that wraps around your foot, is stitched to the sole. That stitch is what makes the shoe resoleable. When the sole wears down, you take it to a cobbler. They remove the old sole, attach a new one, and the shoe lives another 10 or 15 years. The method is called Goodyear welting, and it has existed since the 1870s. It was the standard. It produced shoes that could accompany their owner for 10, 15, sometimes 20 years. Not because they were indestructible, but because they were repairable. Then the industry found a cheaper way: glue. Modern sneakers, the vast majority of what is sold today, are not stitched. They are glued together from dozens of separate components: upper, midsole, outsole, foam inserts, reinforcements, all bonded with adhesives. It is faster to manufacture, cheaper to produce, and completely impossible to resole. Moisture, temperature fluctuations, and repeated mechanical stress degrade the adhesives. The sole comes off. That is the primary reason people throw sneakers away, not because the upper is ruined, but because the glue let go. And consumers end up buying a new pair every 6 to 12 months. The average sneaker midsole made from EVA foam takes nearly 100 years to decompose in a landfill. Approximately 1.2 billion pairs of sneakers are sold globally every year. MIT researchers found that nearly 30 million pairs are thrown out annually in the US alone, and less than 5% of those are recycled. Why so little recycling? Because of the glue. The same design choice that makes them cheap to build makes them almost impossible to recycle. They go straight to landfill, where the foam sits for a century. Over a 10-year period, a consumer of glued shoes will have thrown away 5 to 10 pairs. A user of properly stitched shoes will have kept the same pair, replacing only the sole when necessary. That is not progress. That is the Phoebus Cartel logic applied to footwear. If you want shoes that can actually be resold, look for these terms: Goodyear welt, Blake stitch, or Norwegian welt. Brands still making resolable shoes include Allen Edmonds, Red Wing, Wolverine 1000 Mile, and Clark's. They cost more up front, but over 10 years they cost significantly less. The cobbler didn't disappear because nobody needed them anymore. They disappeared because the shoes stopped being worth repairing. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because a repairable shoe is a shoe you only have to sell once. And once wasn't enough. The furniture filling most American homes right now is not only designed to fall apart in 5 years, it is also off-gassing a known carcinogen into your indoor air while it does it. Walk into any big box store, IKEA, Wayfair, Target, Amazon, and the vast majority of what you're looking at is particle board, or MDF, medium density fiberboard. These are not wood, they are wood chips, wood fibers, and sawdust, the cheapest possible byproduct of the lumber industry, compressed together and bound with adhesive resins. The EPA identifies MDF as generally the highest formaldehyde-emitting pressed wood product. In homes with significant amounts of new pressed wood products, formaldehyde levels can be 3 times higher than in older homes. Formaldehyde, which the International Agency for Research on Cancer, part of the World Health Organization, classifies as a Group 1 carcinogen. Carcinogenic to humans. Health effects include eye, nose, and throat irritation, wheezing and coughing, fatigue, skin rash, and severe allergic reactions. This process is called off-gassing. New particle board and MDF furniture releases the highest concentrations when it's brand new. That smell when you open a flat pack box, that is formaldehyde, and it doesn't stop quickly. It can continue off-gassing into your indoor air for years. You assembled it in your bedroom. You put it in your child's room. and it has been releasing a classified carcinogen into the air ever since. Particle board can be so toxic that experts recommend you do not cut or break it in your home. Professional moving companies advise throwing it away when you move rather than transporting it, because it is not built to survive being moved even once. According to the EPA, over 12 million tons of furniture are discarded in the US every year, with 80% ending up in landfills. Because particle board and MDF cannot be repaired, when it fails, and it will fail, it goes straight to the curb. Recycling is nearly impossible because the glue and mixed materials make it extremely difficult to process. Compare that to solid wood furniture. A well-made solid wood piece can last 50, 75, 100 years. It can be refinished, repaired, passed down. The farmhouse table your great-grandmother had is probably still out there somewhere. The $199 bookshelf you bought 3 years ago is already warping. When buying new, look for solid wood construction, not wood veneer over particle board. The words solid wood, solid oak, solid pine on the label mean something. Even better, buy used. Vintage and secondhand solid wood furniture costs less than new particle board, will outlast anything flat packed, and is already finished off-gassing decades ago. Estate sales, thrift stores, online marketplaces. The best furniture deals in America are in someone's garage. Let me pull this together because it all connects. In 1924, a group of light bulb manufacturers got in a room and decided that a product that lasts is a product that threatens their revenue. They engineered failure into the thing on purpose. And then that logic spread from light bulbs to every other consumer category over the following 100 years. The clothes on your back shed microplastics into the water supply for a century and irritate the skin they're pressed against all day because cheap synthetic fabric costs less to make than natural fiber and wears out faster, driving replacement. The shoes on your feet are glued instead of stitched, not because gluing is better, but because a resolable shoe is a shoe you only have to sell once. The furniture in your home off-gasses a classified carcinogen and falls apart in 5 years. Not because compressed sawdust is a better building material, but because it is dramatically cheaper to produce and impossible to repair. Every single one of these follows the exact same arc. Find something that worked, find a cheaper version that fails faster. Market the cheaper version as progress, convenience, or democratization. Build the replacement cycle into the product and collect revenue forever. The question I want you to take with you is the same one I always come back to. Who does this actually serve? Because it was never you. It was the revenue model. And the only reason it keeps working is that most of us never stop to ask. Now you have, and that changes things. If this connected with something you've been thinking about, share it. Drop it in the comments what I missed. What broke on you recently that broke too soon? What you bought used that is still going strong? What you wish they still made the way they used to? And if you're new here, this is what I do. I'm Lil, and this is Lil Unfiltered.